morning star. Am I as hopeless as you are?
You're listening to 9 to
Well, I'm
Noon.
sleepless in my better nights.
Keep listening to 9 to Noon.
Stay away.
Fire away.
Russo Radio.
Michael Russo, 9 to Noon, at Russo Hockey via Twitter. And Michael's inclusion is courtesy of...
Best in the business, OVO, LASIK, and Lens, the dynamic duo of LASIK. Dr. Whiting recently joined Dr. Lobanoff. So OVO, LASIK, and Lens, OVOI.com. That's OVOEYE.com.
Earth to Michael Russo, Earth to Russo Radio. How are you with this experimental TV clip?
I'm doing great, man. Nice jersey you're wearing.
You can see it. Wow, cool.
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah, it's the Reverse Retro 2022. It will be available 8 times this year at games. First one tonight. And the Hockey Lodge is where you get it. It's a Reverse Retro 2022, available this evening at the Hockey Lodge or hockeylodge.com. How stuck is the Wild with this goalie situation in lieu of Fleury's injury?
All right, first of all, let's talk about your last 24 hours.
Oh, my Lord. All right.
I mean, LeBron's tweeting about you.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing else to say. I got tweeted by LeBron.
Yeah.
I would have settled for a tweet from like Jalen Noel with the Timberwolves or something, but it's very kind, just very overwhelming, kind, and embarrassing.
Cool. Yeah. Well, as I texted you after the game, I mean, I was driving to the arena during that entire last 5 minutes of the fourth quarter and overtime.
Yeah, Michael.
And I was transfixed. So you did a tremendous job as usual.
Well, thank you. And we dropped you in the call after you texted me. I'm like, this game's so exciting. Russo Radio is sitting in the parking lot outside the X before a Wild game, listening to the game because the game is so great, you know?
No, it was awesome. I'm going to turn on my light here because I look awfully dark on this TV thing.
Okay.
Yeah,
hold on. Russo Radio, Wild, 3-2. How stuck is the squad with the goalie situation and Flowers' injury?
Well, not to overstate the obvious, but one depends on how good Gustafsson is. This is obviously a big opportunity for him right now. He's taken over at times as the number one in the past in Ottawa, and he's going to have to do it again here for a little bit. But the other one is how long is Flower out? And I don't want to speculate too much on what I think the injury is, but if you rewatch that Nashville game, he was bumped into a couple times in that game, and he hit his head, the back of his neck, the back of his helmet on the post on one collision as there. So the hope is that it's not going to be long. I know he's at the rink right now getting, seeing some of his old Penguins teammates, but also getting some treatment and things like that. And the hope is that he'll be back sooner than later, but he was placed on IR. That really technically only means that he'll have to miss 2 games because it's a 7-day IR, and the Wild don't play again until next Wednesday after playing again on Saturday. So I know the Wild are hoping that he's back sooner than later.
I asked Dean Evison kind of this question earlier in the show, but I didn't put it as pointedly or tersely. Is Rossi right now just terrible at this level?
I don't think he's terrible. I do think there are times where he looks overwhelmed. I think a physical game like Nashville the other night was one of those occasions where he really did not have a good game. But really the 3 or 4 games up until that, he had plenty of scoring chances. That line that he had been on had spent a lot of time in the offensive zone. And obviously, a bigger, he's one part of a big problem on the Wild right now, and that's they're getting no secondary scoring. So the pressure on Matt Boldy, Matt Zuccarello, and Kirill Kaprizov right now is absolutely immense. I mean, these guys have 22 of the Wild's 42 goals this season. Looking up and down the lineup, it's really remarkable how nobody other than those 3, and then maybe Eriksson Ek, if you throw in his 4 goals there, are contributing. But, Kalen Addison, 8 assists, but no goals. Goudreau is the number 1 center of this team, 6 points in 16 games. Shaw's come up and done his job. Dura's starting to contribute a little bit, but Spurgeon only 5 points. Duhaime only 3 points. Steele only 3 points. Dumbo only 3 points. Foligno only 3 points. Jost only 3 points. Brodin only 2 points. Rossi only 1 assist. It's not sustainable to not get secondary scoring, and that's one area where the Wild were so good last year. Remember, it was them and the Blues that had the most double-digit or 20 goal scorers in the league last year, and everybody seemed to be contributing. And this year, there's just so much pressure on these guys. So Rossi's one part of that, and at some point here, if they get healthy and he's continuing not to score, you do wonder if maybe at a minimum you send him temporarily down to Iowa just to get some touches with the puck, get some offense, get some confidence back.
Why no Yost Tuesday night?
Jost actually had been scratched 3 games in a row and 5 times this season. And, I think that Mason Shaw has come up and added this bite and energy to his game. He's contributed offensively. And Jost really, after a really good training camp PA, just didn't do that. And so, I think the one word that Jost said that Dean Evison told him in Ottawa when he pulled him in that meeting was that you're not adding bite. And if you're not scoring, you got to add something else. And, again, another epidemic with the struggles the Wild have had this year is they've been so soft along the walls. They're just, to me, there's so many board battles that they're not winning. And you don't need to be the biggest team to win those battles. As I mentioned to you last week, I talked to an NHL coach recently that said that the Wild are the one team that he least recognizes from last year, because last year they were such a good North-South team and so strong against the wall. And this year they really haven't done that. And Jost is sort of one problem in that area. And he's going to have to get his act together and pretty quickly here because, again, as they get healthy here, they're not going to continue to just have a $2 million player sitting in the press box. And so he's at risk for potential waivers at some point. It wouldn't shock me after the GM's meetings if Bill Guerin talked to other teams about maybe potentially taking him on into trade. This could be sort of the last stand for Tyson Jost to impress. Yeah. I don't know if people listening on the radio can't read what you wrote me there.
Well, no, it's an experiment, so nobody's watching except for corner offices, but I want to do it again. Oh, ready?
Yep. It's Jost.
Jost, not Yost. Mother. It's
but you know what? Like it's not like I actually recently asked Jost, is it Jost or Yost? Because so many of those guys in the locker room call him Yosty.
Right.
So I thought like maybe I was pronouncing it wrong all these years, but it is Jost. I will say this about Jost. He's got his head on straight. Like I shared, the Wild, you've been to Tria. The ice rink is 5 floors above the locker room. And yesterday I just coincidentally after the Fleury news got in the elevator only with Tyson and we shared 5 stories down and he's he knows he could read the tea leaves here. Obviously he's down in the dumps about this and a bit frustrated, but he also knows that he has to get in there and next time he gets his shot and prove himself. He's playing on the 4th line tonight, but I would expect that we're going to see a motivated player.
See, this from a corner office standpoint, am I on camera right now?
You are.
Okay, so I show the Jost, not Yost, mother.
Right.
Up here, it could be this pronunciation correction during the experimental TV clipping penalty is provided by Metropolitan Ford, your truck superstore. See, it writes itself. All right. How good are the pens these days? Like I see, Immortality, Crosby and Malkin. They're tied for the most points, and then I look at the standings, and everybody's kind of in arrears.
They've been a lot like the Wild. Which is funny because I've always thought that the Penguins, in a lot of ways, they've always played, it seems like the same system as the Wild, no matter what coach they have. They've been a total 500 team, just like Minnesota has this year. And they've been really, really underwhelming, struggling to score like the Wild, giving up a lot of goals like the Wild, special teams really mediocre like the Wild. And so this is a situation. They've only won twice in the last 10 games. The Wild are opening a 7-game homestand. Joel Eriksson-Ek looked at me, as serious as a heart attack yesterday and said, this is a big homestand for us. And they want to get off on the right foot here today. They've been very, very, very lousy at home, the Wild, this season, 2-4-1, and just very bland at home. And I think tonight's a perfect, sort of tee up against as you mentioned, they still have Malkin and Crosby and some really good players on this team. to go out there and try to beat this team. They're 3-5-2 on the road, and the Wild, there's no excuses anymore. As much as they have these injuries, without obviously Fleury out, Greenway out, Hartman out, and that Hartman injury has really derailed to me the entire team. They've got to come out and get off to a good start tonight against the Penguins and start off this homestand in a winning way.
Russo Radio, Michael Russo, The Athletic, theathletic.com, courtesy of
Ovo LASIK and Lens, ovoi.com. Dr. Lobanoff, Dr. Whiting did my LASIK, helped Russo, Corey Cove. The list goes on. Ovo LASIK and Lens. We love them.
Do Crosby and Malkin in any way look like Hall of Famers wearing out their welcomes?
Well, they're definitely Hall of Famers, and I don't think they're wearing out their welcomes. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of talk of what Malkin's future is going to be like, but I still think that those two are going to wind up being Penguins for the rest of their time. But it's going to be interesting here. Again, it wouldn't shock me if Ron Hextall, their GM, second-year GM there, is going to eventually want to go into a rebuild. But those two have such pedigree in that locker room that it would be hard for me to ever envision them playing in any other uniform, especially Crosby. Yeah. Malkin is somebody that they're going to have to make a serious decision on. He's somebody that obviously, Bill Guerin knows well as well. We all know that the Wild need a number one center at some point. I don't know if Malkin's still that at this stage in his career. But man, I mean, those two are still as good as it gets. I watch Crosby still, and he can still play this game at such a high level. He works so hard. Him and Jake Gensel have just such a great chemistry together. And to me, we keep on mentioning Crosby and Malkin and, the Jeff Carters and the Tangs and all that. But Jake Gensel, to me, is still one of their most dangerous players, always seems to play the Wild well, and is just somebody that the Wild better focus on.
Russo Radio. Now, of course, there are injuries, and Ryan Hartman's injury probably first and foremost, but yeah. and Flower too. But nevertheless, do you in any way get the feeling Evison or Guerin kind of just don't like this mix?
I don't like the mix. Wouldn't shock me if Dean doesn't like the mix. Billy's, it's hard to tell, right? Because he's the orchestrator of this team. He put it together. I think we all knew that they would probably take a step back this year after trading Cam Talbot and trading Kevin Fiala and Kulikov and letting Bukestad go and trading Sturm last year. They're just not the same team. And then when you add injuries to that mix, that depth that the Wild really were so good at last year, it starts to get strained. I mean, you look at the lineup. I'm watching this game from home the other night because Joe Smith was in Nashville, and I'm watching this game at home, and I'm looking at their bottom six, and it's a bunch of minor leaguers. I mean, let's be blunt. It's a lot of the same players, kind of redundancy. And so I think the mix is a problem right now. And Ryan Hartman's injury is a huge part of this. He gets into the fight in Chicago. He obviously has a shoulder injury. It's obviously a long-term injury, I think several weeks, but they are not even sure it's just going to be weeks. Right now, I don't think he's had surgery, but that's always an option. But what that's done is last year they had this lightning in a bottle where they, around this time of year, the Wild were in New Jersey, and they put Hartman between Zuccarello and Kaprizov, who was in a string of games where they weren't playing really well. And it just was a home run type of feel there. And then they played together the rest of the season. And now you take Hartman out of the lineup, and it just changes everything. And now Goudreau, who we all know is not your prototypical number one center, is playing between Kaprizov and Zuccarello. That usually is, look, he's fit there, but, he's not somebody that's going to get a pile of points there by any stretch of the imagination. And then we haven't seen the Grief line play together other than really one period in one game this entire season. That's always considered their identity line and the line that really creates momentum for them, spends a lot of time in the offensive zone, defends that way. And then what it does is it just moves all the musical chairs around. And last year we saw a coach that never changed lines really ever from November on. And this year he has to do it almost every single night because he's trying to spur some sort of offense from a very feeble offensive attack right now, 28th in the NHL offensively. So I don't like the mix right now. And, maybe as they get some bodies back here, things can change. But it wouldn't shock me at all if Bill Guerin's starting to look elsewhere, maybe try to get a little more rugged. Ryan Reeves is somebody that's available with the Rangers reportedly. That might be somebody that interests him, but he's not somebody that's going to score, right? He's going to be somebody that's just going to add size and a little bit ruggedness to a lineup that is not very rugged. So can he add some offense? Can that to me is the biggest task that Bill Guerin's going to have to look at here. He's tried to create cap space. The Wild had a boatload of it coming into the season, believe it or not, to where if they continued to accrue and didn't get injuries come February and March, he was going to be able to go add a $7-8 million player potentially. But the more injuries they have, the more cap space they waste. And now you just wonder what he's going to do and if he's going to have to react sooner. And the one thing last year, if you remember, PA, to make this already long story longer, is, again, I think we all looked at that team as saying, all right, they lack a number one center. But when Hartman became that number one center, it really ended that conversation. Now we're looking at them again and saying, here's the biggest weakness of the team. And I think it just messes everything up. So we'll see what happens.
Time for two more. How has Kalen Addison played?
He's played well, even strength. He hasn't been the greatest. There are times where he's thrown around and things like that. But on the power play, he's added a big dimension. He holds pucks in the zone. He gets pucks in the zone. Their power play has taken definitely a turn for the worse the last week and a half. Their PK has been really good. And as I'm sure Dean probably told you on the morning show, I mean, it is amazing the way that things work in the National Hockey League. This team couldn't score or couldn't defend at the beginning of the year, but scored a bunch. Now it's the complete opposite. They could defend really, really well. They've been one of the best defensive teams in the league the last 3-4 weeks, but they can't score. And same thing, their penalty kill, which was god-awful at the beginning of the season, is now really, really good. But their power play is not winning them games lately. So Addison is a big reason why that power play was good early on, and they're going to need him to continue to bring that to help fix the power play now.
Now, lastly, with some negative conversation there, and it's not like it's all negative because they're only, I think, like 4 points out of first in the division. Who sticks out to you? You have a trained eye. Who's playing well?
Who's playing well? I mean, Connor Durr is somebody that's taken a big step in the last couple of weeks. Mason Shaw, these guys have played really, really well. Kaprizov is still carrying his weight as well. They're guys that I think that are feeling pressure right now that have to start playing better. I know I always turn things toward the negative there, but look, Zuccarello has not been good lately. Boldy has not been good lately. Eriksson Ek hasn't been great lately. He had a great last home game, but in between there, that's not been very good. So they've just got to get started. Spurgeon has played really well lately. That's one guy that I'll say on the blue line that's played really well. Merrill's played well. There's the problem is the inconsistency. They just don't have 18 skaters going on a given night consistently well. And they got away with a 2-1 road trip where the record made it, to me, look much better than they played. They got completely outplayed in Seattle, but Marc-Andre Fleury saved their day. And then they came home and paid the price there, obviously, against San Jose the other night. So they've just got to, get themselves on track, and there's no better way to do so than a 7-game homestand.
My man, thanks for the nice words. Thanks for the text during the game and everything for Pete and I. Appreciate you. Enjoy the game tonight. We'll talk soon, okay?
Yep, see you, PA.
Russo Radio.
Russo Radio.
And that was provided by
Ovo LASIK and Lens, Dr. Lobanoff, Dr. Whiting, two of the best docs on the planet. So go to ovoi.com. That's OVOEYE.com.
If you missed my one-on-one with Vikings coach Kevin O'Connell via X's and O's on Wednesday, trip not. Alas, we replay it each and every Thursday. That's coming up around the corner. Also, the parody put together by mad producers, Darius. And first, we have the cash thing.
The Fan and Granite